All right, so you're thinking of relocating to Olympia, Washington, Lacey, Tumwater, somewhere around there, or maybe you're PCSing to JBLM and you're in the military. So what we want to do is take you through the numbers as of today, what it looks like if you were going to buy a place and if you're going to rent a place.
Yeah, so we're gonna run through some actual scenarios for you. We're gonna give you some numbers on what it would be to rent an apartment in this area, what it would be to buy a smaller 3-bedroom home, and what it would be to rent, so you can see if that might work for you payment-wise. Also a little bit larger home, and just run through some of those rent versus buy scenarios for you.
So let's talk about a little bit about the numbers, some sort of framework for what's going on today in this market, which is we have very few rentals. All right, so rental market is a little bit heated, and the buying environment has higher interest rates for 30-year mortgages. Right now, the date today, it's sitting at 6.75. So if you're watching this video and in the next couple of months, the rate moves down to 5.75, you're gonna wanna make some adjustments on that. Reach out to us if you need to make that adjustment. But we just wanna make that clear because these numbers affect everything. So the time that you're watching this video is really important to understand what the numbers look like.
Yeah, we update this video quite often. So the last time we did it, I think rates were in the 3s. So it's very different today. And just keep in mind, we're not lenders, we're real estate agents. So we don't have every single detail here for you. We want to keep it really simple. So we're just giving you a very general payment.
All right, so we're gonna start with an apartment situation. Let's call it a 2-bedroom. So right now it's currently sitting at about $2,000 a month on average to rent that. And what's the equivalent of what somebody would do if they weren't gonna buy the 2-bedroom?
So if you weren't gonna rent an apartment and you're thinking about buying maybe your first home being a condo, somewhere between $375,000 and $400,000 is that price range, and the payment looks like $2750 a month, but that doesn't include homeowners dues. So you would want to check with your realtor and check out what the homeowners association dues look like, because sometimes those push you up quite a bit in your monthly payment.
Yeah, and you guys are going to see the lien here. So if somebody wants to purchase or live in an apartment versus get into that sort of first level of ownership of housing, right now because the interest rate, the payment is going to feel very high. So we're going to talk about that later in the video. There are some more affordable options for that beginning entry into the market. So it's not to be said that you have to spend $375,000 to $400,000. There are some scenarios where you could get in for less than that. They just don't represent the majority of what ends up happening for people.
So yeah, a good realtor is going to let you know what your fees are for the building. And basically with a condo, you don't actually own the exterior typically or the ground. So you have to pay those dues to maintain all that exterior stuff. So there's just some pros and cons both ways between a home versus a condominium. So the next level up would be a small 3-bedroom, single family home, somewhere around 1,800 square feet is what we found. Those are renting somewhere around $2,500 a month right now. So it seems pretty steep.
So that same house, the 1,800 square feet, if we're looking to take somebody out, we're gonna negotiate the best deal possible for them, but we're still gonna pay right now about $485,000. So it's like, okay, what does that look like on a payment? I put a little money down, not a lot. It's actually about $3,400 per month right now. Keep in mind what I said earlier in the video, the interest rate's really high right now. So if we were to peel that interest rate back, let's say you watch this video and now the interest rates, because they are expected to decrease, and they start coming down. They start coming down they tumble. You know, they go from 6.5 to say 4.75. We're gonna be looking at a much cleaner scenario, much closer to renting. Yeah, so I said $3,400. So if that rate does come down to say 475, then you're looking at $2,700. In order to properly assess whether you want to rent or whether you want to buy, it is not all about just $3,400 or $2,700 per month. The thing that you want to understand eventually, if you don't today, is what is that going to do for my net wealth going forward? Because what ends up happening on property is every year you own it, it typically has a level of appreciation unless we're in a market where it's going down. Historically speaking, if you hold property for a long time, it's going up around 4.5%, 5% per year. So we have to make that assumption because that's what history has always shown. So if this same property were going up 5%, 5% on, let's just call it 500,000, is $25,000 annually. So if we take that $25,000 and we figure out what does that mean monthly, so $2,000 a month that you're actually accruing net worth on the property. So it's not all about just that difference in payment. So I want you to be mindful of that as we make the comparison, because there's a reason why a lot of people, it was like 90% of millionaires out there acquired their wealth through real estate. So you're also getting tax breaks as well. So the interest rate's really high, making it look like a poor decision possibly to buy right now, but we get it. I mean, you have to do what you can afford. What I would want you to do is I'd want you to run the numbers out based off of a long ownership period. What's the $500,000 house going to look like at 5% appreciation over a 5-year period? And what does that do for my net worth? And then compare that when you're making your decision on whether you want to pay a little bit more to actually make a house payment and invest into that property and build net worth versus just giving money to a landlord.
That's a lot of information, but I totally agree. I think it's important to understand, like, investing into your future is different than just basically narrowly looking at your monthly payment alone. It's important to think about how long are you going to be in your place? Is it a 2-year investment? Is it a 3? Is it a 5? Is it a 7? And those things all play into the factor of whether or not it makes sense to rent or buy, not just the payment.
So let's move on. We'll get back to what you came here for, which is for very specific scenarios and situations. So let's talk about a little bit bigger place to rent and a little bit bigger place to buy.
So the next scenario, we have a 3,000 square foot home, 5 bedrooms. Something like that is actually hard to find as a rental in this area. If you've got a lot of kids and you're looking for a rental and you need 5 bedrooms, the only ones we found were between $3,200 and $3,400, but they're really not in line with what you can buy for that same square footage. So I think really if you're lucky enough to find one, it's probably gonna be a little more expensive. $3,500, $3,700, $3,800 a month would be my best guess.
Yeah, they're so rare now that what people do when they go to rent these is they see what's out there and they go, ooh, I can get away with a little more, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, at the end of the day, it's their asset, it's their choice. It's unfortunate for those of us that would need to rent something larger. But let's compare it against what it would take to buy that property. All right, so that same house, that 3,000 square foot house, we have to say it's the average house because there's 3,000 square foot houses that are on 5 acres, 10 acres that are more and whatever. So purchase price, if you run the comparable sales, it's about $645,000 today. What that would mean for you at today's interest rates is a purchase price, again, we're assuming a 5% down payment. You may have a little more or less, but that's $4,300. So over $4,000 for that monthly payment. So you'd be comparing $4,300 versus about $3,200 to $3,500 to rent. Again, the only difference is going to be what is going to happen to interest rates in the next 1, 2, 3 years. So there's a lot of people out there who are gonna make this investment, they're gonna acquire the house at a good price, and what's gonna happen is they're probably gonna refinance to that lower rate, so they may not make this high payment for very long. In fact, there are some people that we're helping purchase that are doing a temporary buy down, and they're buying the points down using the seller's money, by the way, and placing that money in escrow, so it's a secured interest rate reduction over 0 to 24 months. In the event that the person refinances early, they're actually able to recoup those funds. They're not lost. And don't confuse it with an adjustable rate mortgage because it is not one of those. This is a safer product. But if they were to, say, refinance that rate, and let's say it's 525, they're already down to $3,800 per month, so it's not as bad as it seems. As you go up in square footage, you're actually closing that gap a little bit. So if you're sitting there and you're overwhelmed, this is what I'd like you to think about. If you're only gonna be in the area for a few years, with high interest rates, it probably makes a lot more sense to rent a house. It's going to be less of a monthly payment obligation. We're in a period of time where we just came out of a lot of real estate home prices escalating in appreciation. So if anything, logic would dictate that the house values, even though they're about steady right now and about flat, at some point, based off of the lack of supply still, they're probably going to increase at a really slow rate again in the future, and the rates are going to come down. So that favors the person who is looking to come to the area and be here for 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 plus years. A purchase would probably be more wise, because you're going to be banking, even at a very modest 4% appreciation, you're going to be packing away value in the house. Now, this is a conversation that needs to be looked at person by person, because with that appreciation, it depends on the amount of time you're going to own the property, and you're also going to have some selling expenses if you were to liquidate that property at a later date. So there's a lot of factors here to take into account for.
So long story short term, it makes way more sense to rent. Long term or medium term, a few years or longer, it makes way more sense to buy. We're always here to tell you the truth. We're not here to try and convince you that it's your time to buy a home. That's something that you absolutely need to sit down and really go over with your realtor that you trust. Sometimes it's not the right time to buy. Sometimes it's the right time to rent for a couple years, and could be the case for you.
So if you are relocating to the area, you're starved for information, maybe you're watching this video from the suggested feed, be sure to check out our channel. There's a lot of videos there that you may get some value out of, that you can sit back and research all you want. But when it comes time to when you may be moving to the area and you want somebody to help you out, feel free to reach out to us. That's what we do all week long.